Hi, I'm Andrea and welcome to Productive C#. In this video, I'm going to show you how to build and consume a gRPC service using C#. What is gRPC? gRPC is effectively an open source remote procedure call system that has been developed by Google. The main advantage of it is that it's using a binary format to communicate, meaning the performance are going to be greater than using other sort of protocols to communicate. And it is mostly used for the internal communication between services in a distributed application. And it's one of the advantages is that it's leveraging the power of HTTP2 as a transport and is using Proto as a binary protocol that is also being developed by Google. Let's have a start. So I'm using Visual Studio and I have a solution with two projects. One will act as a server and one will act as a client. So let's say I want to build a math service that allows me to send a number and an operation I want to perform on the number, for example, doubling the number and calculating the square of the number. So let's build this service using gRPC. So when you want to create a new gRPC service, you can do create new project and specify ASP.NET Core gRPC service. And that's basically what I've done here in math gRPC service. The key package that you need to add to your project is grpc.asp.NET Core. And that's it. You only just need to add this package reference and you're ready to go with gRPC. The next important thing is to define create a proto file and define basically the API of your service. And that's what I'm going to show you now. If you see inside the protos folder, I have a math.proto file, and this file uses a particular declarative language to describe your service. It's using the Proto 3 version of gRPC, and you can learn more about that here on the web at the page developers.google.com/protocolbuffers/docs-proto3, where you can see all the details of how you can build your service. Let's explore how I built this service. I have created a service called math that defines a calculate method that takes a math request as input and returns a math response. Pretty straightforward. The math request is a message that contains a number that is an int32 and an operation that is an enum that you can set to square or double. And the response is also a number called result. So as you can see, it's fairly straightforward to understand this syntax. Another important thing to mention is that C#_namespace is the namespace that is going to be used when we build this project to save all the auto-generated C# code from this file. So that's what happened. Each proto file is converted into a set of into a C# file that contains all the objects required to actually implement the service and to represent all the request and the response messages. Okay, but you don't need to worry about that because this is automatically built when you build the project. Okay, as soon as you've defined your proto file, you can create your service. I call it math service, and implement from math.mathbase. So this is the code that is automatically generated from the proto file. So the only thing you need to do to build your service is to implement this abstract class and implement the actual content of the method. The method takes the request, the math request, and turn the math response. So the only things I'm doing here is basically checking if I want to do a square, and I do a square, otherwise I do a double, and then I create a math response and I return it. So it's fairly straightforward. And you can even use the logger as you would normally do with the ASP.NET Core projects. So that's how you can build a gRPC service. So let's have a look at how you can configure the project to be able to use gRPC. So this is a normal ASP.NET Core application. The different things is there is the add gRPC method that you need to call when you configure your services. You can specify any extra options if you want, for example, enabling detailed errors when you're developing the application. And also you need to use the map gRPC service method to add the math service as an endpoint to your ASP.NET Core application. And then there is by default, as part of the template that Visual Studio provides, when you try to access the gRPC client using the browser, for example, you're going to get a message. So if I run this code, what's happening is that now there is a gRPC service waiting on localhost on the port 5001. So if I switch to the browser, you can see, if I refresh, that I'm getting the communication with gRPC endpoints must be done with a client. And that's what we are going to do now. We're going to build a gRPC client to communicate with it. So let me reload this project. So this project here at the moment is just simply a console application targeting .NET 5. And I'm going to copy the proto definition into this project. I'm going to adjust the namespace to use productive C#. Okay. Now, the only things I need to do in Visual Studio to consume a gRPC service is to do add service reference. I can specify gRPC and then I can select the proto file that I've just added. And automatically Visual Studio is adding all the NuGet packages required for you. And as you can see, this Google.protobuf, gRPC.NET Client Factory, and gRPC Tools has been added to the project. In addition to that, you need to remove this one. In addition to that is also including the math.proto file and setting gRPC services to client. Oh, that's very important, something I didn't show you before. When you have a proto file, if you look in the properties, you can say what stub classes are going to be generated. So on the server, you select server only, so that will generate all the server-side all the code required to you to build a server-side gRPC service. While you're on the client, you specify client only. It's going to generate all the classes required for you to call and invoke a gRPC service. Okay. As soon as you've done that, you can build your code. I've already added some code in program. I'm going to show you in a moment. Let's see if it compiles. It does. So let's have a look at how to invoke the service. So it's fairly straightforward. You create a math client, and you create a gRPC channel from the URL you want to connect to, and then you create a client. As soon as you have a client, you can simply call the method as you would normally do with your C# classes. I'm calling calculate, passing a math request with a number, and the operation double and square. In this case, I'm asking the user to answer a number, and then I will call the service twice, one to calculate the double and the square, and then I'm going to print the result. Fairly straightforward. Now, if I right-click on the solution, and I can set startup projects, you can specify both of the service to start automatically when you press F5. I already did that. So if I press F5, you're going to see the two apps running side by side. So one is the service waiting on localhost 5001, and one is the actual console application talking with it. Let's press 10, press enter. As you can see, the console application is making two requests and then is returning the result. The double is 20 and the square is 100. You can see on the top that we are getting, for example, the calculate is being called with this request, number 10 and operation double, and later on is being called with this particular request. So you can see also the logging that we've done. So that's basically how it works.